Played winners and losers. Let's start with the winners. Pete, biggest winner out of the trade deadline.
Tua Tagovailoa is the biggest winner by
Saves
far.
his job.
He's going to be the quarterback of the Dolphins the rest of the way. He's got to go out now and show people that it's his team, his job. They didn't make the deal for Watson. Look, whether you believe it or not, Brady, that's what he has to do. You think they've decided?
It's not that I don't believe that. It's the fact that he's been the least of their concerns on offense.
I agree with you 100%.
Their system has been suspect. Their offensive line has been poor.
I'm not saying
People need to start looking at Chris Greer and the way he's trying to rebuild that offensive line and how that's worked out, because that has not worked out very well. And then how Brian Flores handled the quarterback situation a year ago that's led to this.
I agree with you, and I've been a Tua critic at times. I think you're right, he's been the least of the problems. He's actually played pretty good football, but go the rest of the way, starting this week against the Texans, and show that you should be their long-term guy.
His biggest downfall is the fact that he came in injury prone, and that's already been a concern, and none of that's been alleviated with his career so far in less than 2 years.
Kind of like his receivers. Every week they pull a hamstring.
Well, and it would help, too, if you take Jalen Waddle, who was arguably one of the fastest players in the draft, and maybe run him vertically.
Yeah,
not this way, that way.
Always this
run him
way.
Downfield. Like throw
I agree.
downfield to him.
Right.
That would be nice to see that,
Right.
but he's obviously one of the winners. The Rams, I mean, you'd have to make the case getting Von Miller, a guy who's going to help out that defensive front. You'd have to make a case that they're a winner. They're going #all in, and we'll see what it equates to. I mean, bottom line is last time they did this, they got to the Super Bowl, didn't win it. The addition of Stafford, you get Von Miller, you got all this stuff going on. The low-key one, though, I did think we'd get Deshaun Jackson moved on from. Didn't happen. Now you wonder if maybe they just end up releasing him at this point in time, let him go his merry way.
Yeah, because there's still speed there, and for teams that need speed, and
Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that he would wind up somewhere else. He will. They'll probably let him go, and he'll wind up somewhere else.
What about a biggest loser? Brady, we'll start with you.
You can make the case for the NFC West quarterbacks now with Von Miller going to the Rams. That's one that comes to mind. I think, look, at the end of the day, maybe you can make the case for Deshaun Watson not getting moved on, not going somewhere else outside of the situation he's in Houston. I don't know how realistic we thought that was going to be. There's some other players who didn't get moved that maybe want to be in better situations you could throw into that mix. But I keep harkening back to you had to deal with Aaron Donald twice a year if you're a quarterback in the NFC West. And all those other quarterbacks, they're going to have to face the playoffs. Rodgers, as you like to always point out, but also the Bucs and Tom Brady. Now I'm thinking like that job only got more difficult with Von Miller being a part of that group.
Deshaun Watson's getting paid a lot of money not to play football.
Just to hang out.
So, I mean, I don't know if you can call him the biggest loser. That's a hell of a way to lose right there, I'm telling you.
I think he'd like to move on, though, at least with that.
I get it. I'm kidding. The biggest loser for me is a guy like Allen Robinson, who wants to go to a team that's a contender and play with a quarterback who is established. He's not traded. And Brandon Cooks, he's a good player playing on a really bad team. And you'd like to see a guy like that maybe get moved again because he's only been moved 32 times in his career.
Hey, look, he's valued. I mean, there's something to be said for if he gets traded every time. This would be his fourth time being traded.
And for a couple number ones at some point in his career.
And everywhere he goes, when he's there healthy for long enough, 15, 16 games, he usually has about 1,000 yards receiving.
And that team is a mess, and so you'd like to see a guy like that get out and go play with a contender.
All right, y'all's winners and losers. We're going to talk about fantasy coming up here in just a second. But first, for everything in the NFL, Brady, you just finished recording this. I know you told Chris some stuff you guys talked about in the beginning of the show. Is there anything helpful throughout the end of the show?
Did talk about the young quarterbacks, the rookie quarterbacks, kind of gave a scale of who's playing the best, who's playing the worst. We did talk about that. So
okay.
Tease
There's
that.
something. We'll tease that. Make sure to download and follow. For the fantasy impact of the trade deadline, let's bring in Jamie and Dave to talk about this. Biggest winners and losers. Jamie, what do you think about your biggest winner?
I'm going to go just with the guy who was actually traded, Mark Ingram. He gets an opportunity now to be with a winning team, obviously from an NFL standpoint, but from a fantasy standpoint, he is one injury away from being a must-start fantasy running back. Just an absolute dream situation for people that are holding on to him right now. Now, the last thing we want to see is Alvin Kamara miss any time, but if he does, Mark Ingram could be a potential league winner for you. So I think he wins if, in fact, he does get an opportunity for an increased workload, but obviously he wins all around because he gets to be on a winning team.
The Ravens were talked about being a landing spot for Marlon Mack, for other running backs. We pontificated on Melvin Gordon going there, but no one went to Baltimore. And the Ravens are doing some weird stuff with their running backs all year because they've had weird stuff happen. And now they're going old at the running back position. Don't tell that to the Titans is a bad thing. They think that's a good thing. Latavius Murray and Devontae Freeman, they're winners. They're going to be fantasy relevant for the rest of the season as long as they stay healthy. We know that Latavius Murray is the rushing downs back. Devontae Freeman figures to be the passing downs back. And if Murray isn't ready to play in week number 9, then Freeman can end up working on some running downs as well. The last time we saw the Ravens play, didn't see a lot of Freeman getting carries. I think that could possibly change as the Ravens consider maybe making some small alterations. But these are going to be the running backs that Baltimore will roll with.
All right, let's look at the biggest losers here. Dave, I want to start with you because you're going with Deshaun Watson.
Of course, because Deshaun Watson, once upon a time, if you think back to 2020, was an amazing fantasy quarterback. And just the chance of him being an amazing fantasy quarterback this year was enough to make people run out and spend a roster spot on him over the last week or two. I know in a bunch of leagues that I'm in, 14-plus teams, Deshaun Watson was on my bench just in case he was traded. And now I actually feel pretty good about things because I can just cut Deshaun Watson and pick up somebody else off the waiver wire because I know he's not going to play for Houston again this year, and the waiver wire is rich with some interesting players at running back and wide receiver this week.
There was a report that Odell Beckham could have been traded to the New Orleans Saints, which would have been great for the Saints because they need some help at the wide receiver spot. It would have been great for Jarvis Landry because what we saw last year when Beckham missed the majority of the season was Landry was actually a pretty good fantasy wide receiver. What we see when these two guys are on the field together, Landry loses in a big way because it's almost as if Baker Mayfield's forcing the ball to Odell Beckham, Landry not producing at the same level. And so I wanted to see Jarvis Landry back in that number 1 spot, catching passes from Baker Mayfield, producing like we saw last season. Beckham staying in Cleveland makes Landry a loser once again, and so you can't trust Jarvis Landry as a starting fantasy wide receiver anymore.
Jamie, Dave, we appreciate it so much. It is now 4:09, so we are well past that trade deadline. Does not appear absolutely anything else will happen today. We appreciate it, you guys. For more on those two, for everything you need to know about the world of fantasy football, make sure to download and follow Fantasy Football Today. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.